to heart. 14:52. And from God we seek aid. Muhammad Al-Amrani.